Hi, my name is Matt from the Loom of Time.
Shieldsy, Evocatus.
And welcome to the Tomb of Lime podcast. This is episode 11, where we start on the next album. This is album number 2, season 2, podcast season 2, where we'll be looking at the depths of hell itself, among other things. Sorry, the song's called The Depths of Hell Itself, and we're also looking at other things. The album, at the time of this recording, is out on Friday. Yes. So if you're seeing a recording of this, it's probably already out for you. But even now, it feels to me like it's done. It's out because people have listened to it now.
We heard it.
It's not a big secret anymore.
Not a secret.
There are.
It was a very big secret.
Yeah. And I guess now that people have actually heard it, that weren't involved in the making of the project, and some of them have been able to say, I like it, or give us some feedback on it. It does feel like it's out, even though technically it's not. And of course, this No Clean Singing website also hosted a premiere where you can listen to.
You can just stream it.
Yeah, but can't own it.
You can go there
yourself
right now, kids.
So we probably got a lot to talk about because releasing an album is a big deal.
Yeah, a lot to talk about.
But is there anything you wanted to say first up as a follow-on from what we did on the last episode of the podcast?
Yeah, so the last time we were here together talking like this, you subjected me to the record unannounced and tested me and tested yourself, I guess, being that the idea was you put some ideas in my mind about what I should expect or what I might expect. But you painted those expectations for me. And then tested me on them, or tested yourself even, with the idea that you might write something more accurate in a written blurb about each song or the overall feel of the record or whatever.
Sure.
Now, I had listened to it once. I'd listened to it with those expectations. I think at the time I was quite I'll say shocked. I don't know if that's the right word, but because it was...
You were not prepared, at least.
No. I don't know what could have prepared me for that first listen. I mean, the first listen is always going to be the first listen, right?
Yeah.
And you could have gave me a track-by-track breakdown and told me every element or whatever, and I would have heard it, and maybe... Who has that kind of preview, right, before they hear something for the first time? They have some expectations, and we delved into, fans' general expectations and why they exist, and, those preconceptions. But this was very specific to your record, and we talked about it for 20 minutes or so before you said, right, let's put it on now. And I was like, now?
Yeah.
Yeah, now.
Yes.
Cool. My response to that was not as measured as it is now because of... the emotions that I felt at the time, because I was not ready for it.
Sure.
I've since heard it again at the party, and then I've heard it again and again and again, because you can just go on to No Clean Singing and then just stream it, right?
Yep.
So I have done that and heard it a lot, and I'm much more familiar with all of the songs now.
Yes.
And when I think back of the the expectations or the ideas that you placed in my head for how you thought a new listener, or maybe even someone who's familiar with the Loom of Time, to hear this new record. Those things that you said to me are more correct than I thought so last time we were here.
Okay,
that's what I think now.
But okay, I mean, that's nice in a way. But it's also almost like maybe because you'd heard me say them, you were able to find what I said in the music in a way.
Yeah.
And perhaps your first response was maybe a more authentic one. But who knows? This is one of those, almost subjective things where it's really hard to, you can't have a control in an experiment group for something like this, right?
An experiment, like it's in any case, an experiment is going to be interesting depending on the subject, right? And you call this record of yours the subject. I'm a subject of the experiment because you could test me on other records the same way you tested it on your record. You could test someone else the same way you tested me, whether or not they're more or less familiar with the Loom of Time, like perhaps Brad, who's more familiar with the Loom of Time, or a cousin of yours who's never heard it, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
They're going to have different results.
Yes, yes.
So it is difficult to have a control. To your point there before where you said, like, maybe the test was somehow tainted by the fact, well, now I've heard it a bunch of times and I say that you are more correct in those preconceptions that you were trying to give me. I can honestly say that, like, it's been completely genuine. And I feel like if you hadn't given me any of those expectations, I would have still felt as shocked about what I'd been subjected to for the first time. And then through familiarity and, perseverance.
It might be the case that nothing I could have said could have properly prepared you, because words just aren't great at expressing these things.
Sure.
It's also it could be the case that in hindsight, what I said, you can see that what I was driving at, in with more familiarity, but it's still not the case. That what I said was enough to give you the correct expectations, perhaps. And I'm not going to be too hard on myself about that, because again, I think it might be that it's impossible to give correct expectations, and also it could also be the case that if you set up the expectations like 100% correctly, then there's almost no reason to listen to the music, right? That's it's like when you look at in science mathematical models of the planets in the solar system or whatever. The more accurate you get, the more useless as a model it gets, even though it's more accurate to what's actually happening. And if you were to make it so accurate that it truly shows you exactly what it is in the universe, it's as complex as the solar system is itself and becomes totally pointless. You may as well just look at the planets floating around. So in a way, maybe it's like that.
It's just another interesting perspective. Okay, so like another art medium where in this case it's music. You might be able to explain the same thing that your lyrics might. No, sorry, put that aside for a second. You can convey the same emotion that you can in a song without vocals in a painting or in a book that is words that you can explain, maybe in a mathematical equation. Not too much emotion going on there, but nonetheless, there's heaps of different mediums for conveying the same thing.
But at
broadly.
the same time, they are all different from each other.
That's right.
And there are some elements to each one that is unique to that form of art. So,
but whatever the person, the audience, let's say, is experiencing that art, no matter the medium, they can still experience the same emotion, whether it is a painting or a song or a poem.
There's a set of human emotions that's
attached to it.
Yes, yep. So I mean, it's all. I feel like an extended experiment could be, if you were to then go and do the experiment that I did to you on some other unsuspecting individual, is there something that you would say different to what I did to you now that you've had the familiarity of what I said? The experience of experiencing it with that in your brain, so, and now hindsight,
having listened to it another 50 times, what I would say to another listener, if they were familiar with Nile Reich, I would say it will be quite the journey on the first listen. And then on the 10th listen, you'll be like, that's just a Loom of Time record.
Okay.
It's much more familiar now than it was. At first, it almost seemed so different. And the only familiar part was like your guitar tone, some of your guitar technique and your vocal. But other than that, it was totally different.
Right.
But now I can see through, experiencing it over and over that there's lots of familiarities with Nile Reich.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of an analog there. It's like when a director or something who's famous for one genre of film does some other genre, and you didn't know it was them, would you be able to pick out their techniques? And I think the trappings of what they do, if they were absent initially, you'd think, wow, this is totally different. But upon reflection, you can see that there's more similarities there or something. Yeah. So, the expectations you set up there were almost like, on your first lesson, you cannot have correct expectations. On your first listen, you will not appreciate what's going on.
Yeah, I think there's nothing that I could tell anyone other than like, oh man, this is going to hurt, but you'll get used to it.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's interesting. It's interesting feedback to hear, and my quest to help people with their expectations so that they can appreciate it is ongoing. Perhaps it may be the eternal struggle, actually, to get that right. Well, I now that I think about it, there are probably some things that I've experienced where the only way you can set up correct expectations is experience it once and then at least once again.
Okay.
With those, having heard it once, those are the only way to set up correct expectations for the second listen is to listen to it once or something like that.
I had a similar experience the second time I heard it, which was weeks after the first time I heard it, and I only heard it once that time, which was at the listening party.
Sure.
While the emotions I had were different to when I heard it for the first time, because I was sharing it with a bunch of other like-minded people who had never heard it. We have dog.
Beagle.
Dog.
Hello. All right.
Just through even the slight familiarity of hearing it just the once. When I heard a part that I recognised, I was like, oh, that's right, I remember that part. That part was cool. Or I think I hear it and think that part's really cool now, but it really scared me the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
So, I think it would be a good experience to test those things. And I don't know how you're going to do it now because everyone's heard it.
Yeah.
But for someone to hear it once and then hear it again, to measure hindsight, I guess, in that experiment.
I suppose it is possible that someone who reviewed the album last time, although it's many years ago, might review it again this time, and we might get a different response there. But here's the thing. You don't have to tell me anything that anyone told you in confidence, but did anyone say anything about it to you at the party, like people that you were with that were listening to it for the first time?
Nothing nothing interesting.
Just general stuff.
It was just like, oh my God, man, man's a genius, blah, blah, blah. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no surprises.
Good vibe stuff.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, had a few beers.
I can't imagine anyone... especially in that crowd, would have gone away from that thing, not gone away from that thing, but shared at the time, like, oh man, that's not what I expected, and that was, it was a bit on the nose, or it's nowhere near as good as, oh man, those lyrics are horrible, or whatever. And particularly, and I know there's going to be a whole episode about it, but the way the album finishes with that particular song leaves everyone like melted into the floor. It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And just before I got here tonight and I was watching the last episode that we'd recorded here. So the fast forwarding through the 45 minutes of record that fast forwards through in about 20 seconds. And then there's just me at the end of that when we go to talk again and I just can't talk. That's what it's like.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh man, that last song was just like, oh.
Yeah. I think there's, there's something certainly electric about the atmosphere of a gig that kind of, I think, biases people to enjoy music sometimes. I don't want to say that music's better live, but in a way, the atmosphere, it does affect us, right? It affects how we feel about things. And I think it does, because the music is not sort of isolated, it comes with an experience. I think it creates a very memorable and pleasant, positive association in the minds of people.
It's electric.
And I think the listening party, although not quite to the same degree, does a similar thing. So you're with a group of friends
Dog 2.0.
and dogs. And sorry, we'll give this a second.
Dog.
So a listening party doesn't have the same effect as a gig, but it does have a certain
very similar. Yeah. And I remember the first the Nile Rock listening party. I felt the same way, and I'd never heard it before that, so it hit me like a ton of bricks as well. Yeah.
But I think maybe for people who were there listening to it for the first time, the atmosphere might have changed their appreciation for it. They're more, they look across, they see someone smiling, they might be more inclined, and because they're smiling just because they've had a few beers and they're eating a piece of cheese or something.
Yeah. In that sense, I guess it is really similar to a gig because you're hanging around with friends and you got
you're in a good mood, in a good place,
people to bounce off. It's loud.
So I still feel like the experience you went through on your first listen was kind of more like a more pure experience of the music rather than the atmosphere of the party. So it's possible that
except I wasn't prepared, but yeah.
That's right. You didn't know it was a listening party when you
you shot a big torch in my face and went, listen to this.
Yes, I did. They would have had one experience. You've had a different experience. You had a different experience again because that was your second time and so on. But another experience that you've had, although it's been a bit more intimate with, is the lead up to this album release. The music video that we put out and the content stream that we've had, and the fact that the podcast has been coming out.
We've been doing this,
yeah. And with the music video, there was a song released, and with that label put up the album for pre-order, there was 2 songs available and so on. So you also bear witness to this promotional period before an album, which I wanted to talk to you a little bit about. Now, that kind of concept of doing that and the work involved doesn't seem naturally linked with the music creation process, because you can write an album and you can leave it on a hard drive and no one ever needs to listen to it. But when you're going down the path of releasing it into the wild, and you're under the not so much pressure to do it well, but in a way it's like you want it to get in the ears of the people who want to who would benefit from it. So you do want to do a good job of this, and certainly I wanted to do a better job of it this time because I basically did none of it on the first album because I wasn't sure what the response would be and whether it was a big waste of time or not.
Yeah, you'll never know if no one hears it.
But so this time I didn't want to, I guess, squander the opportunity, as it were, that comes with the release of an album. And I know that you've also been on that side of that in Evocatus as well. And I guess I wanted to see what your thoughts were on what makes good promotion, what's necessary, what's a waste of time, what have you tried and didn't work, what have you tried and you were happy with, or how important do you think it is, and what's your experience been with promotion of, say, your last album?
It's definitely it's important, right? Because otherwise it could be that you have an excellent album that would just flop, and not because it's bad, because no one had an opportunity to. No one knew it existed. The Evocatus experience for me, or for us, I guess, was different to what you could have done. The entire time, we were playing shows all the time.
Sure.
And similarly to you having played 1 or 2 songs live before that appear on Grand False Karass, it was years ago, right? Everyone, almost like since Nile Reich and since you guys had played shows, being as secretive as you had been the entire process, aside from the people who were involved, the Loom of Time almost slipped into obscurity altogether.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas Evocatus never did between records, for a similar timeline, I guess, between records.
Whereabouts in relation to COVID did you release Mortem?
Very poor. No, Mortem was 2017.
Oh, that was way before.
Tartarus, poor decision. Tartarus was almost ready to go. Well, the music was ready right at the start of COVID.
Yeah.
And we played some amazing shows right before, the world lockdown.
Yep.
And things were looking really good for us for 2020.
Yes.
We had even a lot of good shows lined up. We had this album ready to go, but we were waiting on a few, final touches on like artwork and the physical stuff that we could, send to print, and then it would arrive.
I remember now, like the last gig I went to before lockdown was Cattle Decapitation, and you guys were...
Everything was ready. We had the whole, all the songs were done. Or everything, the whole image was ready. All of that stuff was done, and all we needed to do was finalize the package that we could, you can buy this, or you can, take this away and it's yours to keep and enjoy.
Your shows did get kind of turned off then.
Yeah.
For
only
your release.
Temporarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the pandemic and the way shows sporadically happened, during the brief lifting of each lockdown as they happened. We were fortunate enough to play shows throughout 20 and 21. through various stages of, different rules and restrictions and whatnot.
I remember a sit-down gig with a flaming wreckage.
Nonetheless, they happened, right? And we're fortunate and, thankful for that. But all in the back of our minds, we knew that it was a bad time to release a record, because when you release a record, naturally you want to back it up with promotion as best you can. Mm-hmm. But everyone is, stuck at home.
I mean, what I'm picking up here is that as far as promotion goes, live shows is a very important,
really important,
significant, part
Well, it's one important factor where you can move a lot of music in physical media to someone who's just heard it, or someone who's just seen you do it on the stage.
Yeah, because that electric atmosphere of the gig.
I really love how that feels. I really love how I feel right now because of what I've just experienced.
Sure.
I'm going to take that home with me.
Yeah.
So that's important. And that's what we wanted to do. That's what we felt was our next step. And when the world went on hold and we were ready, and at the time we had employed, the assistance of a promoter or like a kind of like a management thing to help us promote this release, Path to Tartarus. We knew it was going to be hard, but we didn't know how hard, right? Because no one had ever experienced what happened in our age, None of us are 150 years old and went through the last, Spanish flu or whatever, trying to release death metal record.
Yeah, of course.
We kind of picked a random date in the future where we naively expected that everything would be back to normal and we could play an East Coast tour or something like that to promote the record.
Yeah.
That's what it was all about. It was like, we'll put the record out, we'll put it out at the right time, we can play gigs, we can jump on a bigger tour, play some big support shows, run a headline tour, whatever it was. We didn't know at the time, but we thought, okay, and we're talking about like we're in April or something like that, where stuff was really bad really quickly.
Yes.
And we thought, okay, let's go for October, end of October. Surely.
Conservative estimate.
Yeah. Like that'll give us heaps of time to get the artwork done. And anyway, we had everything done, and while still, using this service of this promoter guy, and it came out, and I can't remember if there would have been a lift in the lockdown, because I remember playing a show mid 2020. Anyway, but it was definitely less than it ought to be because of all the restrictions and.
Yep.
It was just kind of like, okay, everyone, we know it's a bad time, but we said we were going to release it now. So, here it is. Please enjoy.
Right, okay.
We're playing a lot of the songs that are on that record in live shows already.
Yep.
It's not like very different to what you've done with the Loom of Time, where it has been ages since you've played a show. And now you've got this new record that is vastly different from... Not vastly different, but, a whole collection of extra new stuff. And even the songs that you were playing... in your last, shows that are on this record are vastly different from how they've ended up. I'll talk about the services of this promoter that we used.
I would be interested in that.
Yeah. So he, instead of having a label do the work for you, the guy, and he has a label, he would tell us how to do that work for ourselves, and it's kind of the work that the label would be doing anyway on our behalf. Okay. And we paid him for that information, and he would give us advice, and we'd have weekly or fortnightly meetings, I guess. Okay. Over Zoom or whatever, where everyone would dial in and we would just talk, and he would give us pointers, and he'd be looking at all of the, socials metrics and stuff that we've got. We gave him access to all that stuff that he could just log in as us, and gave us pointers about how to post stuff on socials, what to post, how often to post, what time of day to post, stuff like that. Okay. All this advice, and it worked as well. It was good stuff. It got some good... The stuff about the social media and posting and when to post and how often to post was all around trying to beat the algorithm. Sure. And really, when you might be scrolling through your socials and you've got a certain page that you follow, but you don't ever seem to see it in your feed. It's because of how often that page interacts with you and vice versa, how much you interact with that page. If it sees more of that interaction, it'll go like, oh, you like that, do you? I'll show you more of that. You know, you need to do that for it as a page that you want to promote, and then it will just
get those
it'll
interactions
snowball on that, and you can get to a point where it learns enough of the snowball that you're trying to build that it will just self-sustain. And then as soon as you drop off, like it'll drop off big time. So you kind of got to keep on top of it, and it's got to be relevant, and you've got to have those fans engage with you for it to work.
Okay. So how much of a difference did you see, let's say, from the process of promoting Mortem and Diaz than with Tartarus? If this was just a Tartarus unique process that you went through, how much of a difference did it make it, do you think? How much reach did you gain? I know it's hard to put, a feeling on numbers on that, but you'd have a feel for, I guess, was it worth the effort? Did you get the return that you sort of wanted to see out of the effort that you put in?
It's difficult to say because we didn't concurrently do the opposite to compare it against.
Sure.
And Mortem was a different time, and we didn't have that, support or experience that we had in Tartarus. So and it was different. They were different to each other. Tartarus also, we had the challenge of, you could say challenge, but also like the blessing that everyone is sitting at home on their computer, not, working or driving or whatever. So social media had a lot more presence in people's lives. We just couldn't play shows. So that was the big thorn in our side.
Okay.
For that.
When you had to focus on social media then in that case.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's talk about that side of things because, that's sort of what we've got going on as well because we're not in a current place to play shows either.
Sure.
You released 3 songs off Tartarus.
Tartarus, yep.
In
the lead up.
The lead up, yeah. Was there a specific reason you picked those songs to play?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that was advice from our help as well.
Okay.
I think we kind of had that idea, and he was like, "Yes, that's correct. You should do that." Warriors of the Sea,
a live video. Right?
Yeah. So that was a live video. That was the studio, the album recording.
Yes.
But it was footage of us playing that song at the Cambridge that was pasted together, filmed by various people, and then pasted together by us and put that video together and put it onto YouTube. We felt it was a good fun song for people to get a hold of and sink their teeth into. It was there were not really any much more thought than that put into it.
All right. Do you feel that song is representative of your sound, or were you trying to sort of create a certain specific feeling that one?
Not particularly. I mean, it's not wildly different or anything like that.
Well, how's this? I mean, we talk about how the first song on an album is usually an introduction to the album, as it were.
Yep.
Now, you picked a song that was not the first track on the album as the introduction to the new album for people who are listening. Why didn't you pick track 1, for example? You think this one was just I think you might be right when it's like you say it's more fun. It's kind of got an upbeat energy to it. You know?
And we knew that because we've been playing that song live quite a bit, and we knew that it grew right.
So it's almost like a crowd favorite already. Pretty much,
that was one of those things.
To lead with. Yeah,
certainly not the song off that record that we've been playing the longest or that we were the best at playing.
Sure.
For the studio version, that doesn't really matter.
No.
But in terms of the interaction and the reaction we get from the crowd when we play that song live, we thought, it's a good song. Let's just put that on.
So does that mean that you picked that song because you knew that your first single was going to be a live video, like the live footage video? Or did you always have that song in mind for a lead? Like if the video had just been a lyric video or whatever, would you have still picked that song, do you think?
I think Vaughan might be better placed to answer that question. I don't know.
So there may be a logic behind it, but
there might be a mystery. Yeah, but stuff that I'm not quite privy to. Because he made that video himself, and of course, showed us and said, well, what do you think? And we gave a bit of feedback and a few tweaks here and there, and then boom, that's the finished product. Yeah, it looks good. Let's put that in the bank for when we're releasing singles in the lead up to to the record. It was just a great song, and we thought, we'll chuck that out there. People like it. The video is good. So, Yep. Then after that, so we got a lyric video made up, animated with the album artwork, which turned out phenomenally well. And that's the title track of the record as well. So we felt that we picked that one for the lyric video because we felt, and I had an inspiration from another lyric video. Wilderin have a lyric video from their, is it called The Veil of Imagination?
That sounds right.
Something like that, or at least that's a song off that record.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an animated version of the album artwork turned into a lyric video. And I thought it was so good. I looked up who made that video, just in the YouTube credits, and I just reached out to that guy. I said, man, that video is excellent. I looked at all his other videos as well. He does a bunch of stuff for Rotting Christ. And they're very similar style. And I thought, man, I really love that style. You know, what can you do for us? And he said, I can do this. And man, what he punched out for us was incredible. And with some further, collaboration with the original artist as well. We had to go back to him and say, hey, we need to get some more information from you. He said, I don't really do this, but, it's a cool idea. So, here you go. So title track, Tartarus, because it was loosely, the artwork was related to the content in the song. That was the choice for that one.
Yeah. Okay. So what you were going for there was the best video that you can make, and the pairing of art with music and lyrics was made the best video that could be. Okay, solid strategy. Yes, good.
That was understood. Much more definite than the first one. Right. In terms of like why we did that. The last one, and it came out the Friday before the album was released. We did Centurion. And that was a full scale cinematic production where we had a day of shooting with photographers, with all the band and a whole heap of extras, yourself included. It was a great deal of fun. And then those people went away, made the video, gave it back to us, bit of feedback, backwards and forwards, final product. And it was like, wow, that turned out great.
And so I almost would guess that it was a similar thing as what you said about the Tartarus, the title track video, is that you had an idea with the lyrical content and the song to pair well together. You just tried to make them match well together. Now,
the reason we went for Centurion as a song to pursue, like, okay, let's make a video loosely representing the lyrical content, is similar to the first song, Warriors. It's just a great song that people seem to enjoy on the live front. Let's make a video and release it as a single because it's already a popular song.
Right,
rather than picking one of the more obscure songs off the record, like
the deep cuts,
Walls of Troy, or, even track 1, Cronus Olympus. Man, we've never played that song live. Pretty sure the only time we've played that song is to record it. I don't know how that would go live. It's difficult.
So in a way, I guess some songs are better suited for live, and it's almost like some songs are better to be in the context of an album listening experience, something like that. And to pull them out as singles wouldn't do them justice because they're part of a greater whole or something. So the ones you've pulled out are ones that have to sit well on their own.
That's right.
In this case, they're ones that have performed a certain way in live. So it was about picking 3 strong songs that can act independently because they have to be released independently.
Right. And the timeline was important for those things too.
Sure. There's practicalities involved getting that together. Sure.
So you start to build the hype around, a month or 2 out. Well, not a month, but 2, maybe 3 months out from the release. You kind of give your fans an idea that, hey, something's coming. And then you might have an actual, like, okay, this is the thing that's coming. There's a record coming out. And then here is the first, single, it has a video.
So it's possible that if the timeline of making those videos had been different, you might have still picked those ones and those videos, but maybe released them in a different order if they'd been ready in a different order.
Perhaps.
But it wasn't super important. It's just more like you have these 3 styles of video, different variety, strong independent songs.
I think the order of the releasing that we did, Warriors, Tartarus, and Centurion, that was always going to be it. It was always going to be in that order.
Okay. Particular reason, or you just had a strong intuition about it?
I think without like trying to pick your favorite kid, we just felt like they got better each time. Like right. Warriors was good, Tartarus was better, Centurion was the best. If you start with the worst thing first, and it's pretty good, and then you build on it, rather than start with a good thing and then the second thing you put out is not as good as the first thing, it's like, it's a bit of a letdown. So we just wanted to keep it going. And of course it's subjective as well. Yeah,
you're talking in terms of quality, but there's other ways to think about it. Like I know that 2 songs might be equally good, but if one of them has more of an epic feel or something, it's something you want to leave for the later, because it doesn't feel like it's coming down, even though the short, fast and angry one is of a similar quality or whatever.
Yeah.
There's certain feelings that you might want to build up to there, and you might have done that there as well, because at least with Warriors it is a very in-your-face song, and I don't want to say it's not epic or anything like that, but those other ones perhaps had a grander feel to them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, they
so
do.
There's a certain building in atmosphere there, something like that. The song that I wanted to talk about today, track 1, was never going to be the lead single, I think, because of various reasons. The label kind of jumped the gun on it because I didn't know what they were going to do with it. I just knew that I wanted to release Lancer Longinus as the single, and have that first, that as the introduction to the album.
Because it's a video?
Well, no, I picked that song before I decided to get a video made.
Okay,
right? Because I thought it was more appropriate as a single. But the label, when they put the album up for pre-order, had track 1 available. So anyone who went to or saw the notification in their Bandcamp or saw it on Bandcamp, that this song, Depths of Hell itself, would have been the introduction to us and our sound and our album.
Right.
And I don't know if they just picked it because it was track 1, or if they thought that was the best song as an introduction to the album. My intuition was, but because this is such a long song, I think it's the longest one on there, and it's quite dark, and it really lets up. There's no fun chorusy type stuff in there. Like there's fun stuff in a way, but it's
fun is subjective.
Yes. But it didn't seem like the lead single type thing that you want to do. But now I think about it, the label is a black metal label, and if I were to say that it's the most black metal song on there, then that might make a sort of sense. It's a similar idea to I'm sure I mentioned, I think it was Peons of the Cosmos was the one that people picked up to play on their radio shows and whatever, even though it was the long, dark song that I would never have picked. But
it's very black metal.
Yeah, but people...
or it's the one that's most, or least, it kind of stays true to itself the whole time rather than dancing about the place.
Yes, I suppose you could say that.
Yeah.
I do perhaps feel like on this album that in the songs, when I wanted to write a song with a genre feel to it, a focus, that I was better at sticking to it or coming back to it or whatever. And it's certainly the case in this song that there's some black metal at the beginning, perhaps some in the middle, some at the end, and so maybe it's a successfully black metal song, consistent in that way or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It was always the first song on the album because I wrote it first, Shoulders of Giants notwithstanding, because to make this clear, Shoulders of Giants was started before any of these songs were written, because we wrote it for the last one, but it was not finished until the point in the album that it comes in. Okay?
Right, okay.
So bearing in mind that I probably revised little bits of all the songs over who knows when. This was definitely the first song that was finished, let's say, for the album.
Yep.
So it goes on there first, and also because the intro, the very first few notes and whatever, are a good kickoff start to an album, let alone a song, right?
Yep.
So to me, it is a good kickoff song for the album, but I do not think that it's representative of the sound of what's going on for the rest of the record.
Whereas Longinus more is.
That's right. So when you're listening to it as an album, when you've got the whole thing, I do think it is a good first track. But as an introduction to what might come in the future, and it's the only thing you have in isolation, I think it's probably misleading.
Sure.
Perhaps the label wants to mislead people into thinking that it's all dark black metal all the time.
That's different to the explanation for track 1 on Nihilreich, Ashes of Your Fall, where it is representative introduction to the rest of the record.
It is.
So it's a different thing. Has that come from a different place in how you put it together?
I mentioned before that I just keep trying to make a black metal song and then getting distracted. Well, I think at the end of Nihilreich's done, it's out, starting a new album. I'm like, all right, now I'm going to write a black metal song for real this time.
Oh, look, butterflies.
But I had more focus, I guess. And I think the reason this one's not an overture is because, Ashes of Your Fall, I was experimenting with all the styles and the things that I wanted to do with the band. It was almost like a pilot, a pilot episode, right? I'm trying it out, whereas come the second album, I know that
you knew exactly what you wanted to do.
Yeah, I wanted to focus more in on certain genres for certain songs, for example, and so we started with this. That the fact that Ashes was kind of an overture is almost lucky, is because I did a bunch of genres in there, and I'm like, all right, now I want to focus on some of these as we go along. To write an overture to Grand False Karass, I would have to have finished the album and then gone back and gone, all right, let's write an overture for it, which is just not how I'm gonna write it. So yes, I think it was a quite different experience writing for it, and that's why it's quite different in its style than the beginning of that album. The song itself, to get into the deets of it, I've obviously talked about how it's a lot more black metal, and maybe we'll just get the elephant in the room out of the way here. There's a section of the song that we muck a little bit with the production value. For comedic effect, evidently. So this is something I've always wanted to, well, maybe not always, but for a long time wanted to do. So there's a section where I don't know how long it is, maybe 1-2 minutes worth of the song, where it just goes to total what they call necro sound, where the bass is dropped way down. The EQ is really tinny. There's no mids anywhere to be found. The vocals are really low in the mix with lots of delay on them. The classic sound of classic second wave black metal or whatever. The old Dark Thrones and even old Immortal and Satyricons and so on.
It's absolutely nasty.
Yes, it's nasty is a good word, and it's a technique that has been used all over the place on lots of records, but only for a snippet. You'll often hear a guitar come in with a really thin production value for a riff, and then they'll hit you with
then it goes bang, like straight into it.
Yes. And I wanted to take that way, way beyond.
You certainly did.
the one riff. Metal's about being extreme and pushing boundaries and so on. I think there was no way to do it where you could half-ass it, really, because the small thing had been done. I think half would have been like, yeah, okay. But to do this full section...
Like 2 whole verses.
It would certainly give a different impression for what we were going for. There's another reason I wanted to do that kind of thing, to that extreme. And one was I kind of wanted to hear... or wanted people to hear what we would sound like if that's the kind of production that we had. Right? And it's funny to me that I think one of the reviews that we had early on with Nihilreich was that we didn't deserve the black metal tag in the descriptions on our website. They picked it out and they said, hey, they put black metal here, but they're really just a hardcore band. And what my thought was if we give this snippet of true cult black metal, I think it gives you an opportunity to imagine, what if we had done the whole album like that, right?
I
I think I'll never know. But I think that if we had done the entire album with that production, everything else was the same. The notes were in the same place, same instruments, same everything. But just that production value, people would be like, this is an avant-garde black metal band.
Yeah.
They would say, it's avant-garde, all right, it's progressive or whatever, but it is a black metal band. But I think as we stand right now, I don't think people will say Loom of Time is a black metal band.
No.
I think they'll lead with something like progressive or avant-garde, whatever.
Yes.
And to me, that's an interesting, if it's true, and again, no proof, but if that's the case, it kind of says that the production value in this case can shape the genre that you sit in, notes and lyrics and everything else exactly the same.
Blast beats the same, everything the same. But if you have good production, then you've just put out a death metal record instead
or something.
Yeah.
And I think your brother Lyndon, who spearheaded putting us on Encyclopedia Metallum or whatever,
really,
initially put us up as some genre, and then actually wrote in a revision and said, actually, it's black metal. I just didn't realize because the production was good, or something like that.
I have to check that out.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. It's many years since I saw that, but it was an interesting thought in my mind that that black metal sits in an interesting place in music, that we can manipulate just the EQs and things to change how people feel about a genre.
Yeah,
and I almost wondered that. If we were just trying to get the niche of avant-garde black metal, perhaps we would have, perhaps the album would perform better if the entire thing just sounded like that, and we just marketed ourselves with a black and white cover on the, and war corpse paint and so on.
There you go. There's a way you can release the B-side of the entire record for your 20-year anniversary or something like that.
Just the worst, the worst version.
And I had thought about this in the times I've listened to this song and tried to really pay attention to what's going on in the black metal section.
Okay.
I would love to hear, the full production value version of that, which is the opposite or the inverse to what you were saying before. Like, it'd be interesting to hear the whole record, with all the bass and the mids dropped out.
You want to hear the necro sound, but with decent production.
I want to hear that section of the song, but, full production value like the rest of the song.
Yeah, there was more to producing that section than we could recover. I used some necro sound techniques to make it worse in the actual baked recording, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, we recorded the whole album at Tommy Rock, except for the guitars of that section, which I did
in the bath or something like that.
Well, I did here in the corner of this room, and what we did is I borrowed Jimmy, who played a lot of keys on the albums. He has like a Fender Reverb, just a small combo amp.
Yeah.
And I stuck a Metal Zone pedal in front of it, and just stack an SM57 or whatever, or something, maybe even something worse, in front of it, and just dialed
Fisher Price like microphone.
And dialed the worst tone I could possibly imagine. And recorded it like that, and then sent that back to Mitter, because it's the only part of the album that I knew I could do well is the sound,
the rubbish one.
Yes. And I had to. I don't think. I wondered if anyone could see the vision of what I wanted to do and think I was crazy. So I had to say in no uncertain terms to Mitter, I want this to sound worse than anything else you've produced. I want it to sound absolutely terrible. I'm not joking here. I'll give you references. Okay, I want it to sound this bad for real. Okay, not like a filter on there. Like it's. I want it to be the real deal. I think I may have said something like, I want people to feel like they've been underwater for 2 minutes. And that when that doom section comes back in, it sounds ever more massive because of the huge contrast that it causes by doing it for so long.
This is a subject of some conversations I've had with people about this very part.
Okay.
At the end of that part where you've spent 2 minutes underwater and your ears don't work properly, and even the first time I heard it, we're 10 seconds into that section and I'm going, like playing with the chord, thinking something's malfunctioning here.
Yes.
Anyway, that's how it went. And then it kicks back in and it is, so much more massive than it could have otherwise been. And you know, great job, because you definitely succeeded in what you were trying to do there.
Yeah, okay. And it's like, obviously, the section that I wrote there, you know, I still had to write the little lead parts and play the rhythm and everything, but you can hardly hear anything, and you can't hear my vocal performance
Out, yeah.
And so this is a technique that they use in a lot of creative mediums, is to make sure that you're happy with killing your darlings, so they call it. You're not being precious about your sound. And so, yes, I offered that part up as a sacrifice to serve the whole, as it were.
Yeah.
In a way, I think maybe the song is so long because I needed this section to be long enough to cause the effect that we wanted.
Yep.
And you know, all the songs were longer than they ended up on the album. You know, I generally write them long and then cut them down.
Sure. Yeah.
And so this one's the longer one because we had something to do, right? We had a specific thing to do. It's certainly the part of the song where we do something uniquely on this song and don't return to that kind of thing. One of the inspirations for to do something like that is that there are certain creatives that some of their works are unique to the mediums that they work in. And I wanted to try and do something that was kind of unique to the medium, not necessarily of recorded music altogether, but to heavy metal, certainly. Like the way that people use EQ and production value from album to album differs, and they're going for certain effects. And so to do something like this in the middle of a song is something that I think works best in the medium of probably metal, because of the existence of black metal and its aesthetics, and also recorded music, because it wouldn't make as much sense like in a book if you went from typed text to handwritten or something. You could do, there's stuff that has some kind of analog, but in a way I at least wanted to try and attempt at getting at something that was unique to what we're actually doing, rather than feeling like a rip-off or an adaptation of some other genre that does it better, or something, or some other medium that does it better. There are enough similarities between, let's say, the stage play and the film, that some things they do better in one medium than in the other, but some they don't. And there are some things that are unique to each one that I think increases the charm of going to see that version of it.
Sure.
Like if you can't really have audience participation in a film that you go to at the cinema as much as you can in a
stage production.
In a stage production. And there's I think some of my heroes in that regard is, I think Stanley Kubrick, who made 2001: A Space Odyssey. To my mind, one of the triumphs of 2001 is that it's uniquely filmic. There's like long extended sections where with very little movement is a very slow moving film. All right, but that would make no sense in a written book version of it. It's just like, and then it got a little closer, and then a little closer, and then
you've got
closer.
That whole
it doesn't make
2-minute
sense.
section in 2 sentences.
It doesn't make sense like that. And also. There's a guy who makes video games, Hideo Kojima. His famous export is the Metal Gear Solid series. And spoiler alert for a 20-year-old game or whatever. There's a part in Metal Gear Solid, the original PlayStation game, where a character, like a boss enemy, is a psychic, and they show that he's psychic by having the game read save games on your memory disk and then insult you based on what games you've been playing. And to defeat this boss, to avoid the idea that he can actually read your mind, you have to physically pull the controller out of port 1 and put it into port 2, because that's not your input, whatever. Then you control your guy, and then he can't predict where your character's going to do, so you can actually hit him. And so that's an example of what I would call unique to the medium of video games, right? And so these kind of creatives who are doing stuff that's unique to their mediums and are capitalizing on it is something I wanted to try out, at least to approximate it in the medium of music, or at least in the genres of heavy metal and how we perceive it. So I think I do a couple of other things on the album that are in that vein, but certainly that's an obvious point where we play with production value as like a slider that you can change for your music, which is not something that's easily translatable to other mediums, and I think not something that's often done in music in the first place,
right?
Except for very brief moments for certain effects.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like to think that this song is has some unique impetus there, some unique
definitely
effect. So that's the story of the necro section of the depths of hell itself. The rest of the track is, I think it's still pretty varied. Like again, even listening to it the first time when you said there were some parts when you first started hearing it that were quite jarring. Like
yes.
It still has, like slow doomy stuff in the middle of black metal, and then or even quiet, slightly spacey stuff and so on. And I think that was my mentality going into this one, was into the whole album, I think, was that I did want a bit more dynamics.
Yep.
I don't think there was a lot of quiet sections on Nihilreich. For the most part, it was
no.
It's pretty full on all the time.
Pretty full on the whole time. Yeah.
I think dynamics can be an important way of creating flow through a song, and contrast, and you can use it as a technique, of course, as well to create impact and so on. When everything comes back in or whatever.
Yeah, like the doom after the necro, definitely impact there.
Yeah. So so I think it's still got a lot of stuff in there, but even the dark, even the doomy or spacey sections, it all still feels quite dark, I'd say, and less fun in that sense. Like, I know the necro sound is fun, right? Yeah. But it's not fun. It's not happy,
it's not water slides and whatnot. It's it just sounds. It's fun because it's silly. It's
fun because it's like a novel idea and so on. It's not fun because there's an atmosphere of happy in the content of the song.
Not a happy song at all.
And when that doom section comes back in, we've got a violin there. So that's
who is that?
So her name's Lily. She's obviously a violinist. She's actually a death metal vocalist as well. So she's quite a talented girl.
Did she do vocals on the record too?
No, she didn't. So we had her in for the violins, but I think by the time that she came in for the recording, we had sort of done all the vocals already, but she certainly could have contributed, but it didn't work out that way. But I think I've known her a long time. I don't think I ever actually went to school with her, but just mutual acquaintances and so on. And I asked her to do it. And the violin in a doom section is a sort of homage to bands like My Dying Bride, who have capitalized on violins in doom metal, in what you call the gothic doom.
Sure, yeah.
But I originally wanted more gothic doom on the album, as how I said I wanted to go deeper into the genres that we explore. Then gothic doom was one of the ways that we could do that. But I think in the end, that was the only sort of section it ever came up in. I wrote other gothic doom sections for other songs, and I just couldn't get them to work the way I wanted them to. So we just snipped them out, and I did something else.
Well, that one definitely worked.
But this one worked. And it provided another instance, because I couldn't get it to work in other sections, of a unique part of this song that's unique to this song.
Unique to that song,
I can say this is the one with the violin in it. That's, you can
So it's the only song with the violin?
Yes. There's a couple of other songs that have some strings in the background, all right, but certainly none that have a real violin.
Sure.
And certainly none where the violin is the kind of focal...
Like the lead.
Yes. Yeah. It's a bit hard to hear, but right at the end because there's it dies out after that doom section for some nice, quiet section. There's a bit of acoustic guitar.
Oh, it's very delicate outro.
Yeah, until the very end. Just a few seconds of intense screaming and blast beats at the very end.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the delicate part is after that. Anyway, but the part you're talking about before that.
Oh, there's a delicate part before that.
Yeah. So you're clean singing at the end.
Yeah, a little bit.
Before that last screams. Yeah.
And over that last hurrah, that really intense section just after that quiet section, I asked Lily to just make screeching noises on the violin. It's just nasty. So they're pretty subtle, but they are there. So
yeah, right. I don't think I'd noticed. I'll go back and look for them now.
Yeah, well, and that's another thing. I wanted to make this album a lot more detailed, as something that's what I mentioned, and to do that in a sonic fashion rather than different notes, because I could do all the notes that anyone's playing on the guitar, for example, but I wanted to do it with other instruments. So and I think that helps to accentuate the different genres that we hit. So the organs only come in on the doom section, that sort of and the violin only comes in at the gothic doom section, and obviously the necro guitars in the blackest of the black metal sections.
I did want to talk about the different the different sounds and different details, as you call them, in this song in particular. The violin was one that we covered, and I didn't know about that bit at the end. But yeah, the organs fit quite well, I think, in that section of the song that they're in. Not unique to this song, because I know there's some pretty heavy organs in some of the other songs. But who's playing the organ?
So that would be Jimmy. That would be Jimmy James. I think I had a crack at writing them.
Sure.
And then I sent him some MIDIs.
Yep.
And he sort of adjusted things and fixed things up and ran it through his gear and got that really nice sound. And it's almost it is a bit of a shame that they don't get more of a feature, because I did say to Mitta, who mixed it, that for basically all of the detail, all the accessory elements, I didn't want them to overpower, become too much of a feature for the song, because I wanted the song still to feel complete when we played them live. And these were kind of second pass additions, right?
Okay, yep.
So there are moments in the song where a lot of really cool elements are actually quite subtle. Actually, the whole album rather, and that's okay. I think that serves the song better. But I do also feel, know in my heart of hearts, man, I wish they could be the focus, and because they all sound huge, good. I'm happy with the way it turned out. It's
absolutely.
Just for the amount of work that goes into a lot of these things, they ended up being subtle on the album. But I guess they're the kind of details that reward perhaps subsequent listens. Or just very attentive. People. Is there anything in the song that you felt like you maybe missed on the first time, or perhaps didn't understand? Or?
So much stuff. Like we said at the start, the first pass for me was quite jarring, and nothing could have really prepared me for it, even to the point where I thought some of the advice or preconceptions that you gave me kind of went against that. But I didn't come from the same place you did in that preconception. You're talking about the way the song was written, structured, came out on the page, all that stuff, and I'm just hearing it for the first time. I had nothing to do with it other than that. So when it just hit me in the face, and I was like, oh man, that's crazy. That's wild. That's not at all what you said. It's supposed to be smooth, Anyway, back to those details. Is there some kind of it's somewhere in the middle of the song, is there a Middle Eastern string instrument, or Eastern at some point? There's a very specific sound in that song, and it might just be like overly zealous strumming on a guitar that's kind of made it through into the mix, that sounds almost acoustic, like there's an acoustic guitar thrashing away in there somewhere.
Might have to hear the specific point you wouldn't be able to tell you, so might move on, might have to get back to you on that one. But
I mean, there evidently isn't, because otherwise you would have just said, "Oh, yep, that was."
I know there's an acoustic guitar almost at the end when the violins, the heavy doom riff drops out and the violins continue. There is an acoustic guitar there. I'm just trying to think. So one thing that we did do was that basically for the guitar tone, we recorded all the rhythm sections with our main rhythm guitar tone, and whenever we went to doom, we added a fuzz, like doomy fuzz guitar tone, but subtle. And whenever we went to what I'd call death metal, we added like a HM2, Swedish chainsaw sound, but
know the one.
subtle. And I think, well, for the black metal one's a bit too more obvious, right? That one's not a subtle one at all. So there's might be, you know, just sonic information coming from those extra guitar tones that manipulates how you feel or what you hear or what frequencies shine through in certain sections and stuff like that. They're pretty subtle. I originally thought maybe they could be less subtle than that, but I think Mitta got it right. I think it is one of those things where you just it's almost like you feel it rather than consciously hear it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I did that basically across the whole album.
Yep.
So whenever there's a section that I feel is traditional death metal, it's got that Swedish buzzsaw tone on there, but it's not replacing the main rhythm tone. It's just like an overlay
added. Yeah.
So there might be subtle changes in the sound across the song that affect what you're sort of perceiving to it. Maybe upon re-listening to it, you might be able to pick out where those changes are.
With those elements, with, you know, the fuzz that you put into the doom and the HM2 that you put into the death metal, have you got a way that you can model those sounds for when you're taking it to the stage?
Yes, I'm working with certain changes, and I think when we take it to the stage, we might be able to do something along the lines of because we've got two guitars, we're working with two guitars. One will be able to do a fuzz, and one will continue with the main rhythm tone, so that we've got those elements there. But when you're recording it, you can have quite extremely different tones because you're blending them together.
Man, you can do whatever you want in the studio.
But live, I think the too huge a change might be too jarring. So we'll probably tone it down a little. But in the effect in the end, I think will be kind of similar. Yeah,
what I meant to say was rather than just having like your main guitar tone that you might have throughout the whole record, and that's the one that you might bring to the stage, and then you've got a second guitarist doing that HM2 or that, you know, big fuzz. Instead of that, can you model a certain sound in your guitar rig to do that combination so it is subtle and you don't have to have that big jarring change on stage?
That technology exists.
Yes,
but
it does.
I don't have that technology in my arsenal.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was going. Like, tell me how you're going to do that.
Yeah, so we're going to do it, but what it's going to be more like is switching from the main rhythm tone to a fuzz tone.
Yep.
But EQ shaped in such a way that there's enough similarity
softens
there.
the change. Yeah.
That it still feels right.
Yeah.
And
that's good.
Might be a work in progress. We might have to see how it goes and how it sounds and get feedback on how to make that work. But I'm confident that we can get it to work.
Yep.
And see, the thing is, I think taking it to the live show, switching between those tones is probably more rewarding for people who are familiar with the studio record than it is for the punters.
Because you can pick it out. And then it might even lend itself to showing a familiar listener. It's like, oh man, I saw that on the stage and that thing was really prominent when they did it live. And I went back to the record and I was like, oh yeah, that is there.
Yeah, it might highlight things.
Yeah.
I missed. Yeah, I toyed with the idea of the necro section live to be like, all right, we're gonna need to set it up so that the sound guy just turns off all the stage sound or whatever, and we'll just play it without stage sound, and then he can turn it back on when the doom section comes in. But I think maybe we'll just change up our guitar tones, maybe change up the vocal delivery or something. It'll still sound different.
It'll still be filthy.
Yes, but it won't be as huge a difference.
Change. Because that's across the entire song that the EQs had the arse cut out of it, whereas you won't change the drums on the stage.
Exactly.
But it's maybe tricky. You two guitarists and the bass player might be able to stomp on a pedal on the floor, and all of a sudden it just goes to arse.
We'll be yes. We'll get that necro sound approximate,
and then you can kind of just, I don't know, screech differently.
Yeah. a good a place as any to probably have a little chat about the lyrics on this one.
Oh, yeah.
So the way I normally write a song is that I come up with the lyrics first, and then I hang the music off it as it gives me some structure. And I did that with this song, but then I was not happy with the lyrics, and I deleted them all and then replaced them all with the lyrics that we all now know. The reason the first lyrics I wrote, I think were experimental in a way, and they obviously all the lyrics on the album and for my whole musical career have been not my personal point of view, but explorations of dark and depressing things or challenging things and so on. And so I wanted to take that and continue that. But the lyrics I ended up coming up with, I think, although they fit that bill, they went far enough that I didn't really want to sing it. It didn't feel like an academic exercise at that moment. It just felt like it felt... well, I guess the major problem that I would have had is that if the lyrics become too challenging, too controversial, too whatever, then they might overshadow the music. People might fixate on the lyrical content instead of, and that is the worst case scenario for someone like me. Because as I've said many times before, the lyrics aren't important. The music is what's important, and the idea that if I wrote some lyrics that became the focus of what people were talking about when it came to the song, that is you've defeated the purpose. I've defeated the purpose. So I rewrote the lyrics almost in mind with some of that kind of frustration about not being able to just totally go wild in the lyric content. And I think even though I rewrote the lyrics to be milder, I think they're still incredibly controversial. Perhaps, well, I mean, all you're doing is like you're talking about a challenging subject, right? Yes. Yeah. And the challenging subject that you're talking about is challenging subjects. Yes, I suppose. Yes, when you look at it that way, yes. Yeah. And so, yeah. Well, the other thing is, I think this, although for the most part my lyrics have wandered around in philosophy, the problem is that philosophy does cross over in plenty of places with politics. Yes. And one thing I would like to say is that when it comes to discussing politics in a place like in the public sphere where people can listen to you, but you can't directly interact with them, i.e. not a private conversation, I certainly don't really want to talk about politics because I find that it is too often the case that people's politics become part of their identity. And when you just discuss it, you can end up if you attack their politics, they feel like you're attacking them personally, and it makes them resistant to having that discussion. I feel a lot more free to have political stuff, even though I would say it's not really what I'm interested in. Although I do try to be responsible when it comes to that sort of thing and be educated, and it's a continuing journey and so on. But it is the case that even though I'm interested in politics, it's mainly philosophy that interests me, and especially inspires me when it comes to writing these things. But when politics comes into it, I'm not afraid to have it in the lyrics, because the lyrics were never ever going to be an accurate representation of what I thought, and I would hope that people realize that, because the lyrics are often contradictory and conflicting. So yes, there are maybe one or two moments on the album where it veers into what I might call political territory, and I think this this first song is one of them. It talks a bit about hate speech and free speech and the tensions there and so on. This is the challenging subject of challenging subjects. And how to deal with that as a person. But I think it certainly becomes political because I think the whole freedom of speech thing is perhaps more libertarian and liberal leaning, whereas there are other ways of dealing with say prejudice and hate speech and so on over. So it gets, I would say that when we explore right-wing and left-wing things as an exploration in music, it ranges from, I guess, liberal or libertarian to, it goes all sorts of left-wing places on there. But I would say there's certainly right-wing places that I don't want to even suggest is worth discussion. So it never veers up into what you might ethnocentrism, for example. I don't think this is a worthwhile place to just explore an academic exploration of entertain the ideas here. I think I can pretty confidently say that this wrong.
We're not doing
it's
that. Yeah.
stupid. I think it's incorrect, and it's not.
Yeah.
There's nothing there to entertain. However, and that's why I almost wanted to write a song that was explicitly anti-prejudice and hate and those
Yep.
things, but veer from left to right and talk about the tensions there and so on.
Yep.
And so that's kind of what's going on there. There was a documentary I saw called Accidental Courtesy about a boogie-woogie piano player, African American, Daryl Davis, I think it was. It was definitely a D and a D.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, he's this. He played with like Chuck Berry and a couple of the old rock and roll greats.
Yep.
But his hobby is going and talking to clan members and getting them to renounce their beliefs and leave the clan.
Really?
Yes. So
wow.
it's a very interesting documentary, but his point of view is that if you keep them talking, if you're keeping them open for discussion, they won't resort to violence. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. They might be yelling and screaming, but at least they're talking. It's when the talking ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. Daryl Davis.
Yep.
And I put that kind of idea into the song. Although one of the most electric parts of this documentary is where he sits down with like Black Lives Matters types people,
mm-hmm.
and they try to have a discussion about the different techniques that they're using to basically achieve the same goals.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes way off the rails, and they do not have a good time together because there's such a difference in the way they want to deal with the problems.
Oh,
and
wow.
they're saying basically that he's focusing on a select few individuals. You're never going to deal with the systemic problems.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I wanted to explore this stuff. I think in the song, the kind of the liberal or libertarian idea comes out that there's a very old saying. Now, I should have looked this up so that I could quote it correctly, but some old philosopher or whatever said
mm-hmm.
that the truth is like a lion. You don't need to defend it. Let it out and it will defend itself. The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself. St. Augustine of Hippo.
Sure.
And there's an intuitive idea there that when you say something and a lot of people hear it, some of those people will be able to test that information,
mm-hmm.
and then when it comes back that it's false, bad news travels fast. They'll tell their friends, and it'll spread that the information was false, or if it was true, as people test it, they'll spread that it is true. And so and
it's defending itself.
Yes, that's right. So that's the intuitive idea there.
Mm-hmm.
And although it's nice, and although maybe that is the case sometimes, I would also offer now it's the job of the listener generally for the Loom of Time songs to make their own critiques here. All right, but I'm going to give you a head start just for this song because I know that it's perhaps a more touchy topic or a hot button topic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when it comes to the truth being like a lion, that although that sounds intuitively correct, the truth only has really strong power when the listeners are rational. You can have willful ignorance, you can have
mm-hmm.
people that intentionally ignore what they know to be true because it benefits them in some way.
Yep.
So I think the idea that the truth will defend itself is nice, but I'm not sure that's how it works out in reality with human beings because, well, you can go down a very deep rabbit hole on the truth
mm-hmm.
And what it is and, if it's possible to attain it and whether even science goes for that or whether it's just certainty in reproduction of whatever. It's a very deep rabbit hole. But the point is, humans may not be uniquely, attuned to discovering the truth, and it may be a harder proposition to get there than we realize. And so, in a society made up of these creatures that may not be that well attuned to truth or whatever, saying that the truth is like a lion, it'll defend itself, may not be the case. It may only be the case among rational individuals, and
right.
there may not be a whole lot of them around.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Feyerabend. I don't know how to say it. I just read these things. I don't actually hear anyone say it. And he was of the opinion that in science you should just include everything, right? Every point of view, every religion, every mysticism, everything, and just test everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he had this book called Against Method, which is saying that science tends to favor older ideas instead of newer ones, and that it got stuck in the past, and that a lot of scientific revolutions have have happened because people ignored the scientific rules that they had. But one of the ideas that he went the full hog with this one, and he basically said, when you want to convince someone that something is true, you should use any technique that you want. Manipulate them into believing the truth if necessary. And I think maybe I don't know if I ever got through that whole book. It is because the truth is perhaps harder to get at than we realize, and that willful ignorance among human beings may make it hard. And even those techniques that are considered, negative when they're used for negative things are still permissible. Anyway, one thing I would also like to say about philosophy, and one of the reasons I feel happy disowning all of my lyrics, is that it seems to me the more you look into something in a philosophical mindset, the more you make inquiry, it seems like you amass more doubt than you do certainty about anything. Right? For every thing that you decide is true, you've amassed 20 doubts about something else. Right? And it seems like the more philosophy we do, actually over time, all we're going to do is amass way more doubt than we do of stuff that we're certain of. As soon as I've written a lyric, there's automatically 10 doubts to go with every one thing that I've said in there. And I never want to be sold on anything that I've said in the past in the lyric, because even if I did believe it at the time, my opinion might change. But also, I like the exercise of trying to do things from certain other points of view. And one way, if we want to be confronting and offensive and so on, is to take two points of view that oppose each other and try to mash them together to find some compromise, because it's bound to offend everyone, right? And I think this song is like that. We're taking, left and right leaning views, although again there's exclusions that we won't deal with because they're not worth, and trying to find some middle ground. And I don't think I do it. I don't think it works, right? It's not required to, okay? It's meant to fire up discussion. It's meant to get people thinking about their beliefs and critiquing them and so on. Actually, when we've put out all the Nihil Reich songs on YouTube like visualized, it's just they're all up there now.
Yes.
And we've been releasing them week by week with our podcast on the episodes that we examine them in. And the last one, not the last one, the last track on Nihil Reich, Fight Some for Subhuman, some guy actually followed our YouTube, and then I think he liked some of the videos, but he got to this one, and his comment, it got picked up by the filter, it never published, but it said, "I was wrong about you guys. You don't think what I think you did. You're SJWs," and I think he said "burn in hell" or something like this.
Oh man!
And like I'm not worried about getting this guy back, all right? But I do think he got it wrong, right? I think he he's wrong about us, and I could explain that. Not because I want him back, because I'm happy that someone who would write a comment like that doesn't need to be, around. But I think he thought that the first few songs, it must have been something that he really agreed with, and then he hit the last song, and he's like, "I've been tricked somehow." I think what he
tricked him into enjoying 5 songs.
Yeah, and I think what he didn't realize was that even those 5 songs that he listened to were ironic in some way, and that this last song perhaps was just as ironic, but for a point of view that offended him, whereas the other ones didn't. And he would never have realized, I think, that all of them were meant to offend someone. And if I could reorganize the album, perhaps I could put the offensive song at last for everyone, and everyone would feel tricked. They go, "Oh yes, I agree with all this," and there's a song here I don't agree.
It's too late. You've already got their money.
Yeah, well, something like that. But I think he missed the point, because it's not that he had been tricked because we were actually we had secret beliefs that we were holding to the end to spring on people. It's that, honestly, that the lyrics are contradictory, and they contradict each other and different songs, and there was never a consistent narrative there. And I think if he thought a little bit harder about it, he would have realized that.
And they were always meant to challenge. Like every song is a challenge the way people think.
That's right, and he may have only been challenged by one, and thus thought that it was a trick. Yeah, I think other people from other points of view would be challenged by different parts of it, and so on. And the depths of hell itself, I think, is probably pretty challenging because it veers into that political domain, and it is a little worrying that it's track one and that it might turn people off right at the beginning,
straight at the start. I don't know, like you said about rational thinkers, I think they're going to appreciate what's there and take it for what it's worth, rather than just be offended by something that they don't necessarily agree with. They should recognize that they're challenged by that and embrace that. Now, that's what the song's about.
Yes, I mean, and that's the whole project, is that I hope that people are able to practice that on my lyrics, and
to be better versions of themselves.
Sure. Like I like to think that this guy that was obviously unhappy with our song, it's possible that his entire album, CD collection or whatever, is just all stuff that he agrees with, and nothing ever challenges him. And I'm like, bro, if you like black metal, it used to be like that, but not so much anymore. Yeah. But we're doing something a little different. It's not traditional in the black metal sense, but in a way, it's like a spiritual continuation of the project.
Yeah.
And that actually, when you feel that cognitive dissonance and that frustration that you've found this thing that offends you and so on.
That means it worked.
Yeah, you should be holding on to that feeling. That's what we came. That's what
Rather
we came
than
here
discarding
for.
it.
Yes.
I wanted to touch back on stuff you were saying about didn't really aim to be political and almost to the point of trying to avoid it. But when you talk about philosophy, you're going to get there. From time to time.
Yes.
And then you also talk about black metal and its roots and everything like that. Do you ever find where you find like a good black metal band that you've never heard before, and it must happen to people all the time? You start to enjoy their back catalogue, and then you realise, oh man, these guys are Nazis. It happens a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've been suckered in, as you say. I mean, I think I probably have maybe one or two albums that do have some dubious members here and there. And it is, it's never, that's a whole thing by itself, right? Can you listen to that part, that kind of music? And I mean, obviously I don't want to support people in spreading those kinds of views,
sure.
right? And whether you can listen to music but without paying for it, is that okay? Then, that's a whole thing as well.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. In fact, my original lyrics for this song were kind of wanting to highlight some problematic elements of perhaps black metal in particular.
Okay.
And that's why I feel like they went too far, because they were saying things, obviously nothing explicitly problematic, but it was alluding to issues, and that if it didn't sit well.
Yeah, okay.
It didn't sit well. It became distasteful, like all of my music.
They were
things people might have taken me seriously.
Yeah. And you could alienate yourself from certain fan bases, maybe like a big chunk of them.
Yeah. Again, because of the lyrics.
Get rid of them.
I don't mind alienating people if they don't like the music.
Sure.
But, oh my goodness, if people felt
That's
alienated because I scribbled on a page that I did in 10 minutes while I was looking, just for some frustrated, angry stuff about whatever. No, it would be, I would feel very defeated.
A great disservice.
So nothing like that is going on in my lyrics. But even the stuff that we do explore is very much just explorations, academic things.
Yeah.
And I know that it's also the case that even there are terrible people out there claiming that they're just doing academic explorations of certain things as just kind of a false face to be able to say terrible things. And I don't want to get caught in the trap where I've said something terrible and it's actually, got into someone's ears who it would actually cause detriment to, right? I think that would, I don't want to be part of the problem. So I hope that and I think especially when it comes to things like death metal, where there's so much stuff that is obviously intentionally offensive, crass, violent, and so on, that it's at least in a market among people who are prepared for this kind of thing.
It's an expectation.
Yes. In a way, putting the tag black metal on there is enough of a trigger warning for people to understand what they're getting into.
Yeah.
And I do want to challenge people so that they can grow and get better, not so that you crush them. And I hope I've walked that line. It's a hard thing to do. It's you want to be a little bit dangerous, but not so dangerous. So time will tell, I guess.
Dangerous enough for that guy.
Yeah. Yes, apparently. That song too, I don't know. I guess one of the ways that I can mediate that issue is by this podcast, right? I can explicitly say, that these are not to be taken seriously. Use them as you will. Yep. But for the most part, the lyrics aren't important. And don't listen to them if you do, That's the simple answer. Again, like we said in the previous season, that it's there if you want to dive into that kind of thing. But it's totally, totally optional. So for those on Twitch, album's coming out on Friday.
Get into it.
For those not on Twitch who are seeing this on YouTube, the album came out last Friday. I hope you like it.